Welcome back to another episode of Uncontested Investing. Not just an ordinary episode, though. We've got the 100th, and no, you do not have to adjust your computer screens, your phone screens. However you're joining us today, we have, in the flesh, Tim Herriage joining us, the previous host of Uncontested Investing. Tim, it's an honor. Welcome back.
Nate, thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, I'm so happy to kick this episode off. So if you want to give everybody an update, what is going on in the world of Tim Herriage these days? Or what isn't going on?
We call it Crazy Town, Nate.
Yes.
Population
1.
Yeah, well, it's 1, then 10, then I fire everyone, then it's 1 again. It's kind of that. Yeah, man, just buying houses again, focusing on growing my rental portfolio, selling some off, refinancing some, retooling our team, trying different advertising techniques, spending a lot more time with my family, not traveling as much.
Always a plus.
Oh, man, it's, my 14-year-old, literally right now, he is involved in baseball, track, 7-on-7 football, like personal training for strength and conditioning. My biggest challenge with coming to New York was making sure he had transportation. I can't wait for him to be able to drive.
Nice, yes. Yeah. Get that learner's permit ASAP.
Exactly. But no, because he's like, Dad, I want a Mustang. I'm like, you're not going to get a Mustang. I'm like, you're going to get a Toyota Camry with the remote control that I can just shut the thing down whenever you're being nutty.
Yeah, you got to get those driver instructor brakes on the right side of the vehicle. Make sure you can stop them whenever you want to.
That's right. And eject button.
Yeah. So, because you joined RCN and you definitely took over, you wore so many different hats for us, but you definitely traveled a lot. You definitely kind of pushed what we're trying to accomplish, helped us recruit more business. But now you're able to kind of focus on, you're back to buying houses, you're back to investing, you're back to doing things that, are more in tune with what you did before RCN Capital. So is that like reinvigorated you? Have you found that passion again? Are you loving it just as much as you used to?
In all things, there's seasons. It's funny. We would go to these masterminds, Investor Fuel, Boardroom, Family Mastermind, and it's really easy to give people advice about their acquisitions company when you've been doing it over 20 years. But in the 2 years I was full-time at RCN, I really took my eye off the ball. And for the investors out there listening, they know what I'm talking about. Our cost per acquisition had skyrocketed. Our conversion ratios were plummeting. Our advertising and marketing had gotten stale. It was a ship without a captain. So, kind of fun thing. In December, I hired REI Print Mail to take my previous mail list and scrub it with AI, which was like lead scoring and all this other fancy stuff. I don't know. They scrubbed it with Betty. That's the name of the AI bot.
Yep.
And I agreed to it. And then they dinged my credit card for like $10,000. And my wife's like, what was that? And I was like, it was an AI scrub. It's going to make us
Who's
mail.
Betty?
Who's Betty? And then in January, we tried these check mailers. A lot of the investors out there will get them in the mail. It's like this blank check that's like addressed to your company, and they run an AVM on the list, and it's like, we're prepared to write you a check for up to this amount. My gosh, people were angry about it. My acquisitions team was like, do not ever send these again.
Okay.
And then in February, we did a handwritten letter. It's not really handwritten, but it's a font that makes it look handwritten. A lot of the investors out there know them as the yellow letters.
Okay.
And it looked like those converted horribly. But by the time the end of March rolled around, I think we bought 4 in the last 3 weeks off of the February mail. And then in March, we went to this new postcard format. And, so it's been, when you're helping run a really large company, you're used to decisions maybe being implemented a lot quicker, and you're not used to patience, right? I mean, at RCN, when I wanted something done, typically there were 1 or 2 people I could talk to, and if I did a good job conveying what I needed done, like the wheels started moving really quickly.
Yep.
Now, all right, funny story. So I'm still a senior corporate advisor for RCN Capital. So like every Wednesday, we either have the manager's meeting or the executive committee meeting. And so I still sit on the executive leadership group with RCN. And I get all high level for 2 hours. And for 2 hours, I'm pontificating. We ought to this, and we ought to that, we ought to this. And every week, it never fails. I get off that call and I'm still pontificating, but in my small business. And when I say we need an employment agreement for such and such, like there's no legal department to do that. Yeah. There's no HR department. I'm really just like, I might as well get a mirror and say, hey, Tim, you need to draft this, right? So it's been fun. It's been frustrating. There's so many lessons in my first 10 years was really small business. My next 10 years was really large business. And now going back to really small business, like the lessons that you get to bring with you, they're making my business better, but they're also frustrating because of the lack of infrastructure that I still have to build.
Yeah. So I have just a general curiosity question. Ternus, what does that name come from? Is there inspiration behind that? Is it just a fancy business word that you made up?
Ternus is Latin for threefold. Last year, I went to the best ever conference and drove there to Salt Lake City because I took my kids for spring break. And it just hit me that lending was becoming commoditized. And the best loan officers, the best people, they don't really talk rate and term. They talk about meeting your goals. And so Ternus was founded on, so it's a hard money lending company in Dallas. And I know we really are trying to get rid of the term hard money, and I am too. I just say that so people can identify with it. We do private lending for investors that is not Wall Street backed. 10 years ago, I helped give Main Street to Wall Street when I started B2R with Blackstone, and now I'm just trying to take a portion of it back. So I have this pile of capital, and if someone in DFW, Austin, San Antonio, or Houston has a deal they want to close fast on, I'll close fast on it. And I underwrite on it. I underwrite it the same way I underwrite if I'm going to buy a house. I just look at their comps. I look at their rehab budget. I look at their pictures, and I make them a loan offer. And that loan offer is 70% minus repairs, and you're going to pay all your closing costs, and it's a 6-month loan, and it's 12 and 2, 2% of ridge and 12 interest. And when they say, oh, I can get better than that from RCN, I say, absolutely, you should do that, right? But if you need to close tomorrow, nobody that's a Wall Street lender can close. And so, it's fun. We've done a couple million in a couple months. Already had some repeat customers. That's fun.
There we go.
It's the lazy investor like me that doesn't want to fill out paperwork, doesn't want to wait for an appraisal. No, it's just Ternus is a lot of people don't know I brokered loans for RCN before I joined 2 years ago. I was actually the number one broker many months. I never was a correspondent lender. So it's kind of a continuation of what I was doing. That company was InvestorWell, with InvestorWell before I joined RCN, but it's very niche down. Anytime we get somebody that needs a loan that we can't do or don't do, we just kick them over to RCN. So somebody was like, so isn't this competition with RCN? And Jeff and I kind of laughed. It's very much not competition. It's collaboration. Awesome. And think about it. Now I get to bring that level of involvement with the customer to the boardroom, right? These executive committee meetings, I'm really kind of dialed in on what the customer needs. And if I can express that to the most senior leadership at RCN every other week, the odds of that trickling down to eventually the customers through RCN is much more likely.
Definitely. And you talk about that collaboration, teamwork, that definitely comes up when I'm interviewing people in this new era of uncontested investing, right? How important it is to have a team around you that you trust, how important it is to network and have connections and have people that you can bounce ideas and information off of. So that's got to be, pretty rewarding for you too, because everybody can be successful in this industry on their own. But when you collaborate and you find people that are trying to achieve the same goal, that's when you really start talking about the growth potential and the exponential wealth, right? Like there's just so many more doors that are opened if you're willing to collaborate.
Well, and I got way off topic. What Ternus, Latin for threefold, kind of in my 20 years of doing this, I just know that investors want speed, transparency, and dependability.
Bam.
That's it. Yep. And so I was re-listening to Simon Sinek's Start With Why, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. And it talked about the golden triangle and the 3 pillars kind of the golden triangle of the mind of what people want and why they want it. And so I was like, you know what? There's a market for that. I'll just be fast, transparent, and dependable. Nice. And that's what we are. Like, I'll tell you no really quick. Like, we tell people no 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, will you loan in Tyler? No. right? Will you loan in Oklahoma City? No. Will you go to 75 LTV? No. Will you, is your rate negotiable? No. It's just,
sometimes a quick no is just as helpful as a yes, though.
It's, there's good, there's fast, and there's cheap. And I am good and I am fast, but I am not cheap.
There you go.
And I don't want to be.
Pay for that quality.
That's right.
So as you can see, we're on tap for a great episode here. Let's get the ad reads out of the way. This will be our first sponsor break. We'll come back and we'll lay out what's on tap for the rest of the episode. Tim, thanks for coming back. Let's hear from our sponsors, and we'll talk to you in a bit. REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors. Dive into a wealth of expert insights and knowledge from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information right at your fingertips. Visit REIInc.com to elevate your real estate investment game today. Welcome back to the 100th episode of Uncontested Investing. I am joined with Tim Herriage, our previous host, and now founder of Ternus. Is that your official title? Founder, CEO?
So, funny thing, I have some capital partners, and I told them I would not be the CEO.
Okay.
I don't believe that a small business can have a CEO.
Interesting.
So I'm the president.
All right.
And a founder. But, it'll one day we'll see. Maybe I'll hire a CEO. Look, here's the reality. I can't do anything longer than 2 years. After 20-something years in this, I've learned that's about the shelf life of Tim Herriage's attention.
Okay.
I think we just saw that at RCN.
Yep.
Right. So I plan to do this for a couple years and then hire someone to replace me. And I think a lot of the investors out there kind of have that same vision in their house buying companies.
Yes.
And so I'm the president. I will be the president, probably through 2026. And at that time, hey, who knows? The company may be out of business. I mean, it's happened to me before. But at that time, I intend the company to be well on its way to being a very large correspondent lender for a lot of great customers. And at that point, I'll hire someone to run it, and I'll go start some other business.
There we go.
So I don't know, maybe come back to work for RCN. We'll see.
Sounds good. Well, before you were the president at Ternus, you were our host. So what we did is we put together a little 2-minute video kind of going through some of the highlights of the 100 episodes that got us to this milestone. So let's take a quick look at that, and then we got some pretty good questions from fans. We'll dive into those, and that'll be a great episode. So let's take a look at that video.
I think failure is a loss, and I think when you're an entrepreneur and you've been in the game for a while, you realize that failure is a stepping stone to success. So you have to be willing to fall, but you just have to be willing to get up. So it's not over until you don't get up, right?
At some point, the resources in real estate investing is finite. The relationship is going to be the only thing that keeps you in business for a long period of time.
When I was very young, had a near-death experience, so I look at time completely different. The thing about it is, a lot of things that you're scared of and that you fear are not based on anything real. It's based on an experience that someone else has had that you haven't had.
The goal that I think people should be thinking of is no longer whether or not the time is to get into the market, because the time to get into the market was 3 days ago, it's today, it was tomorrow.
Not a balance between understanding technology and understanding the real estate business. There's ugliness.
The bar is so low in our industry of people calling you back, of people following through. And here's the deal, if you don't respect yourself enough to do what you said you're gonna do, how can someone else?
First and foremost, learn general contracting so you can understand guys like us. 2, make sure you understand the process of putting together a budget. And once, and only once, when you can do that, then you can award contracts. You'll never have to wait for a bid again.
And invest in yourself, write the check, invest the time, because a mind that is expanded cannot contract. You don't want to invest in an area that 10 years from now will be zoned industrial, or you don't want to invest in an area that is, solely for multifamily, only come to find out that it would be transitioned into something else. So just be mindful of where you're investing.
Validated in business that small, consistent behavior repeated over time produces the big results.
All right, so that was a pretty cool trip down memory lane right there. 2 things come to mind right away. Patrick Precourt looks in that hat and this lighting in the studio. And 2, you had a lot of impactful guests before I even was on board with Uncontested Investing, was tuned into it. You were doing this for a long time. So I'm going to start with you. What are some of the episodes and guests and some of those answers that really stuck out to you and you remember fondly?
I think as I reflect on all those episodes, the most consistent theme is a lot of times we can go to these conferences or whatever, and the mindset stuff really feels cheesy or redundant. But if you really look at all of these successful businesses and business owners, mindset is everything.
Yeah.
Like being willing to get, like Mike Hambright says, get knocked down and get back up, right? Brandon Brittingham, he talks about, doing today what you should do tomorrow. Lacey talks about, the time was 3 days ago or today or tomorrow. It's not wait for it. I think this concept of time, of investing in yourself, and of being willing to fail, those would probably be not only the three most consistent things that I heard in that clip, but also from, the 100 episodes that you and I have done. But, Pat Precourt, guy's an MMA fighter, right? He knows how to fail, right? I don't know. It reminds you that every day your biggest competition is most likely the man or the woman in the mirror. And if you can beat that person, you'll beat the market.
Yeah. No, I think time and time again, one way or another, guests that I've had, even in my short time as being a host, have said something similar. Patrick Precourt takes it to another level, right? Because that's like his model is that, if you sharpen your mind, pretty much anything is possible. But at the end of the day, like you said, the biggest enemy is the person in the mirror. So just hearing that is kind of refreshing. It's something that, growing up you think is like cheesy and cliche, right? And kind of something that everybody says. But when you're in this room sitting across from somebody that's very successful, willing to share their story, and that's something that they keep harping back on, then it starts to click. It's like, okay, that actually matters. There's some truth behind that. They're not saying it just to say it.
Well, I'll tell you a story. It's since September, I've lost a little over 20 pounds, and I'm on pace. Kind of the goal is to get back to like right at 200, and I'd got really close to 250 for the first time in my life. A lot of it was travel. A lot of it was stress. A lot of it was, as Jeff told me, self-inflicted gunshot wounds. But, in the airport yesterday before I flew out here, my wife and I ran into this guy, a buddy of ours named Jeff, at the airport. Dude looked great. He's almost 50. And he was like, yeah, I've lost 40 pounds. I've got 10 more to go. I finally cut out alcohol, and that's the way I'm going to get there. And, I was like, man, that's great, dude. You look wonderful. But he was feeling that wall of 50 about to hit him, right? Mm-hmm. He's 49. He's about to be 50. He looked in the mirror, realized what he did. But the thing is, he took the action necessary to change what he didn't like that he saw. And I think when I'm just like kind of throwing this out there, when I look at that video that you just showed, Nicole Espinosa recently went through the same journey. Casey Quinn, who wasn't on there but was a guest, went through the same journey. Brandon Brittingham went through the same journey. Kent Clothier went through the same journey. Patrick Precourt helps people go through that journey. I think, and I'm just kind of spitballing this, you just kind of put it in my mind, I think it's not enough to see the person in the mirror if you're not willing to do what is necessary to correct what you don't like that you see.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the key. The key is if you don't like what you see, it's incumbent upon you to fix it and not to blame anyone else for the results that you don't have.
Yeah. Taking action is the most important step, and sometimes it's the hardest, right? It's like going back to high school and college days, trying to write an essay. You're like, okay, keep putting it off, keep putting it off, keep putting it off. Once you start writing the essay, you're like, oh, I'm getting in a groove now. This is way easier than I thought. An hour and a half later, you're done. You get a A on the paper, right? So it's like taking that first step. Starting it is the hardest part, but it's kind of has that snowball effect where once you do get started, it just kind of falls into place naturally.
You got A's on papers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Journalism major. Yeah.
Makes sense then.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, we got some playing cards in front of us. Let's pick these bad boys up. These are some good questions that we had from fans. And I want to start off, if you don't mind. This is my show now. Yeah. But Riley K. from Ann Arbor, Michigan. This one was an easy one for me, so this is why I want to start with it. What has been the most memorable on-air or behind-the-scenes moment you have experienced on this podcast? If anybody ever got the treat to kind of watch you from a backstage perspective, you're hysterical as you go through the motions and actually record a podcast. So I think just learning from you was pretty funny. But obviously, the most memorable on-air moment is toasting with the old fashions when we did that episode where you kind of handed off the hosting responsibilities to me. So do you have a memorable on-air behind-the-scenes moment?
You know, it's funny. I was actually thinking about that moment the other day. I had no idea what we were going to say on that episode, and I didn't know that I'd like kind of choke up a little. And I watched it. I was like, I kind of did a good job holding it. It was weird. It was kind of like handing over something that you had crafted and created, and it's one of those things like it doesn't hit you till the moment, right? Like kind of like, hey Nate, you're the host now, and it's like kind of like that. But then also, I think for me, there were several times that RCN flew in multiple people at the same time. Like we flew in Gonzalo, Terrence, and Casey on the same day. We flew in Stratton, Dean, and Jason Pritchard on the same day. And those days were just fun. You know, they'd fly in, they'd stay the night, we'd go to dinner. You and I got to go have dinner after our recording. You know, I think I enjoyed the friendships, and my favorite part, I think I said this once or twice on the show, was actually watching the show when it finally came out. Because, as you know, when you're in that chair, you don't really get to hear everything that's said.
Yeah.
You're thinking right now, is Tim talking too long? Do I need to get to the next question? Are we going to have to edit this out? How much more time do we have? Do we need to extend studio time? Is that light hot? I mean, you've got all these things, so you don't even get to hear it.
Yeah.
So when you actually get to watch the final episode that the team puts together, it's still my favorite part. I watch your show every week, every Tuesday morning. It's part of my routine. And I just have an appreciation for how hard it is. So that's kind of a combination of all my favorite moments.
To past guests and future guests, I promise I am listening to you. But to your point, I think only a certain audience may know this, but I have the SpongeBob meme of him looking at all the file cabinets right now. Like you said, you have to compartmentalize, right? Okay, so part listening, part preparation, part how does my hair look, part what am I going to ask next? There are a lot of things that go through the host's mind. Yeah, it is quite an adventure sometimes. And somebody would be talking for 20, 30 seconds, and I'm thinking about something like, oh, I must have just missed something. You know what I mean? So
my turn.
Go ahead.
All right. So for someone looking to self-educate in real estate investing, what are the initial steps you recommend they take to start their journey? Nick T. in Buffalo, New York. Now, I actually want you to answer that, and here's why. I have always had such an amazing respect for you guys in the business development department because you go out weekly and speak to brokers, customers, people that they are searching for information.
Yep.
And you have to take people through this journey all the time. So the question goes to you, Nathan. Someone looking to self-educate, what are the initial steps you recommend they take to start their journey?
From my experience, I think the first step, just so you make sure that you're getting it from a credible source that has your best interest in mind, if you know somebody that's involved in real estate investing that you see from afar that's successful, sometimes that's like the nugget that gets planted in somebody's head of like, oh, if so-and-so can do it, I want to do it too. So I would say ask somebody that you trust first and foremost, right? Sit down, have a conversation, let them be honest with you. Talk about, what was the hardest part about getting started? What are some of the benefits? What are things that I have to look forward to, right? Because obviously there's a lucrative aspect to this industry that entices a lot of people, but it's not just handed to you on a silver platter. So I think having those real conversations with people you know and trust would be step one. Step two is there's absolutely a wealth of knowledge. It's infinite out there of people that have recorded podcasts, lenders like RCN Capital that want to self-educate people that enter the business. You name it. There's real estate investment communities pretty much in every major metro city in America. So finding those communities, embedding yourself in them, and kind of just being a sponge, right? I think learning before doing is important. You want to avoid the paralysis by analysis, so to speak, because you do have to try and fail a little bit. But there's so many people out there that are willing to offer advice that you just need to seek it out. And then when the time is right, when you feel confident within yourself, that's when you try to go find those deals. But there is a lot of education out there and people that are actually willing to help.
That's excellent. Has a guest perspective or advice ever changed your opinion about something in the real estate industry? That's from Jason in Charlotte. And I'll answer that one first. When Lacey came on to the podcast, and I think that was in 2023, and she started talking about like the new house hack, like buying in a new subdivision, one of the first homes. If you could just get it bought, wait a couple years, the value will go up 20, 30%. She was so right. Like, just so right. And I remember I called my wife out. So I met Lacey through TikTok because my wife Jennifer was following her, and she's like, oh, you got to get her on the podcast. And I called Jen afterwards, and I was like, babe, like, that lady is a genius. Like, so we've actually since then went out and bought a couple of phase 1 homes in D.R. Horton communities, renting them out. Cash flow isn't great right now, but I fully believe she is 100% right. If I can wait till they get to phase 3 or 4, that house will most likely be worth 1.5 to 2 times what I paid for it in less than 5 years.
I think for me, when you talk about perspective, I don't know if I've had enough guests on yet to really have that like aha moment, but there has been some reiteration from guests' answers. A lot of it has to stems back to what we've talked about in terms of looking at the person in the mirror, kind of getting out of your own way, being your biggest fan, right? Like there's a lot of mental fortitude that goes into being a podcast host, right? Like it doesn't come naturally for everybody. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while, right? So on the first few episodes, it's easy to nitpick. How do I look in the camera? You know, like it's funny to joke about, but actually that does go through your head of like, you know, a lot of people could be watching this. My friends are going to see it. My coworkers are going to see it. My family's going to see it, right? Well, your mom is different. She's going to tell you look good no matter what. But I think just having that mindset of being like, you know, give yourself the grace of like, you're actually doing this. You're qualified for it. There's a reason I'm sitting in the chair. So hearing that and kind of putting it towards my journey rather than real estate in general or the real estate investment space, I think it has helped a lot.
Cool.
Yeah. My next one is from Sam A. in Columbus. Pretty good. How do you see the podcast evolving in the future?
Oh, I'll answer first.
Okay.
Ask Nate. Go ahead.
Let's see. Again, it's one of those things that it's so early. We've only been doing this since like late February for me in terms of actually recording. So I'm more focused on getting it off the ground right now, making sure that these next 10, 15, 20 episodes look as good and sound as good and are as impactful as what you did when you laid the groundwork for us getting to episode number 100, right? So I like the way that it's going right now. I've kind of taken the angle of there's so many real estate professionals out there that don't necessarily have that narrow focus of investing, but they're real estate professionals that can help investors, right? So I like looking at it through different lenses, talking to people, you know, learning about their experiences and kind of always having that caveat or that twist at the end of kind of translating it back to the real estate investment space. But there's a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of people's backgrounds and wealths of knowledge that can really help people going forward. So for you, when you come with your wealth of real estate expertise doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, right? People want to hear you talk about real estate investing. As me, for the host, I don't have that on my resume. So I'm really just trying to share people's stories, illuminate other ways to be successful in the industry. And I think that's the plan for the foreseeable future.
Very cool, man.
Yep. All right. Am I up next again? Here we go.
I did too. It's only fair to let you.
Yeah, another one for me. Here we go. Upcoming topics you hope to cover or guests you'd like to have on a future episode. I'm going to toss it over to you for the topics. I'll answer the guests. I would love to hear your insight about maybe anything specific in the real estate industry that you think is worth me trying to uncover as a topic or ask people about. In terms of guests, I'd love to have Jeff Tesh on. I think in the fantasy world, Gary V. I think the numbers that Gary V.
I was going to say that for you.
Yeah, I think the numbers that Gary V. would do. And you hear him talk.
Just record a pro say, yeah. Gary V., you're coming on my show.
Gary V. Uncontested Investing. Let's do it. It's funny. I've actually, we talked about this today as well in an earlier recording. I've actually seen him speak, and people will have the confidence to ask him in person, can you come on my show? And he's actually very open to the idea. He's like, yeah, let's try to make it work. Like, I like giving my time to people. I like being accessible, all this, that, and the other. So maybe Gary Vee's not as outlandish as I think it is. But for having Jeff Tesh on, we've both seen him on the trade show floor across the country. He has a little bit of a rock star persona. When people think of RCN Capital, Jeff Tesh is the first person that comes to mind. When I got hired at RCN Capital, it was a result of me being laid off from another company. My manager knew that the business development role at RCN Capital was open, and he said, you know what, why don't you interview it? You know, you'd be great for this. I think you'd get the job. So at the toughest point in my life, probably, of being laid off during COVID, not knowing what the heck the next month or two is in store for me, I got hired by RCN Capital. I think this journey through 3.5, 4 years has been tremendous. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. And just, I think people like hearing Jeff speak, and his insight and his personality. It translates well on camera. So kind of being able to tell him about the impact that he's had on me, and then having a great, insightful conversation would make for a good episode.
You know, when I think about topics where I missed the mark was sharing more. So, like, I'm very vocal with these masterminds that I don't pay taxes. And it's not like a sovereign nation thing. It's just I get enough depreciation deductions to where I can earn a very high salary and not pay taxes. I get all my money back. And literally, I mean, Lord, of one house, we got a $700,000 deduction, and I only have $100,000 into the house. I wish I'd talked more about those type of strategies. I think general business advice, when you think about human resources, culture, accounting principles, basic business. So many people get into real estate investing because it's sexy or they're attracted to it, and they don't really know what they're signing up for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, general ledgers, profit and loss statement, balance sheet, personal financial statements, managing your credit. I mean, that would be a good one. I think, I mean, how many times do you hear about someone that's 5 FICO points away from the next leverage bucket?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I think if I had it to do over again, I would have broadened it out like you're doing and really focused on business basics and kind of the building blocks of entrepreneurial success that are required, not to buy your first house, but actually to build a good, sustainable business.
Sustainable is the key word right there. That's what I thought you were going to say. I like that too. I think there's so much to be learned about credit, how to repair it, how to keep it on track, and then culture would be a great one too. Just going back to the RCN Capital of it all, we have a pretty outstanding culture there. It's a good family atmosphere in the Connecticut office. So uncovering that and asking people how they formulate their culture, how much it's on the forefront of their mind is actually another great topic to cover.
I think so. I mean, you know, look, being around RCN Capital, being a Texas guy, it's been a little weird. You guys in Connecticut celebrate every international day of whatever there is.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's the stubborn 40-something-year-old guy in me, like, no, that's stupid. But when you open your mind to it and you're exposed to it and you see it's important to other people, I think it's helped me grow as a leader and ultimately helped me get ready for the next leg of my entrepreneurial journey. Can I ask this next one, please?
Yeah, floor is yours.
Are there any behind-the-scenes stories or bloopers from recordings that you can share with us? Laura from Tampa. My Lord, the blackmail that these video people have on me, it's just my favorite behind-the-scenes stuff was watching people go from nervous to confident in front of the camera. Because there were several people that were like, this is my first podcast.
Yep.
And kind of was what you were saying earlier. You know, you get to do this week after week after week and practice. And some people, they don't, but they want to. And they know it's important. And they have a message to share. So I think not only watching people go from nervous to confident, but also being in a position to encourage people to go from nervous to confident. It's probably my favorite behind the scenes.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, in terms of bloopers, they happen every episode. Thankfully, we have a marketing team, outstanding editors, and the engineers in the studio making us look good. But the tongue twisters, the run-on sentences that end up not making sense, the countless takes for ad reels. Luckily, we used a teleprompter this time, so I crushed the ad reads. But yeah, it creeps up every episode, and you know your face gets red for a second. You're like, that's going to be edited out. It's fine, and then you just keep it moving.
Well, you know me, I'm always
Yeah.
like I just have to like shake it out.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm sure there's a blooper reel out there of you just shaking your fist
every time.
aggressively. All right. What do you hope listeners take away from each episode? Says McKay in Ludlow, Vermont. So, what I hope listeners take away from each episode is definitely going to be something different every time. I want to avoid the staleness aspect of it, the repetitiveness. I don't want people to ever feel like they watched the same episode twice. So, yes, we have segments that happen every episode. Yes, I have a couple questions that I like keeping in the holster for every episode in case of an emergency, and we need to extend the episode a little bit. But I like diving into people's personal experiences, their professional experiences, and then hopefully that translates through the camera to the listeners, and they can take away a tidbit of information or expertise and just kind of use that in their day-to-day life and take it forward. So that's probably the biggest one for me, is it's going to be something different every episode.
I think advice for people is you're always going to get what you want out of something, right? Like if you expect something to not provide value, it won't provide value, right? It's kind of like when you go into a restaurant and like maybe the smell's off or the staff is not courteous. Like that first impression tends to permeate through the entire meal. Right? How many times have you been upset with the hostess and then had a fantastic meal? You know, it's just, it doesn't happen. I think the same thing goes when you're listening to something like this. You know, you need to be looking for takeaways, ways to make your business better, ways to make your life better, ways to grow your network. You know, it's funny because it's your job to make sure that they have things they can take away. It's their job to pay attention and to listen and to find those takeaways and then put them into action.
Yep, for sure. What is one thing you've learned of being a podcast host? I think you can take this one first, but we both have answers for this. One thing you've learned about being a podcast host.
I think the thing I learned the most about being a host was active listening and trying to be 3 or 4 steps ahead of the conversation, which goes back to what we talked about earlier. Sometimes that means that you're not fully soaking in what someone's saying because you're thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say next? This answer isn't long enough, or, they went the wrong direction. I need to turn it, you know. So I think active listening was probably the biggest thing I learned by being a host.
Yeah. I think one of the things that kind of is a good segue from what you just said too is kind of remembering that this isn't live. So, you know, maybe being more present is something that I can work on going forward, right? Of like, okay, that was a great answer. We're going to take like a 1 or 2 minute break so I can actually work this out in my head about what I want to ask next, what's going to be shuffled because I'm asking a new question next. So that's actually a good point that I just had a light bulb moment as we have a bright light right above us. But the one thing that I've learned is a nice cliche here, but patience is a virtue. So this has been something that I've loved to do for a while, right? Sitting behind a mic. In my spare time, I broadcast high school basketball in a local town in Connecticut. I work for a sports team back in Connecticut as well. And just, you know, when is that big break going to come? Or I've always measured success about what I was doing professionally. And, you know, this journey at RCN Capital, I was being successful the whole time that I thought I wasn't. And that hard work has put me in this chair today. People have recognized my hard work, thought I was good and qualified for the job. And now that I'm actually in the chair and having fun and doing these recordings, learning a lot from the guests, it's really allowed me to take a step back. It's like all you needed was a little bit of patience, right? Like so easy to get caught up in the instant gratification of it all, right? Everything's available for you on your phone. So why isn't the success that I thought I would have when I went to college, got a journalism degree, got a communications degree, you know, why isn't that translated into the field that I thought it would be? And all this time just working at RCN Capital, it just happened naturally.
I think patience is definitely a virtue, especially in careers, right?
Yeah.
I tell my kids all the time, it's the journey, it's not the destination.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's a better way to say it.
The destination changes so many times. I mean, look, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I wanted to be a state trooper. That was it. I was going to be in it because then I could be a Texas Ranger one day.
That's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah, but not the baseball Texas Ranger, like the law enforcement.
Walker Texas Ranger.
Yeah. And now, I mean, if you had told me that I would be invested in things I'm invested in and own the things I own and have done the things I've done, I'd have been like, dude, you got the wrong guy. So I love that at your young age, you're already seeing that, patience, focus, and persistence will get you there.
Yep.
Nate, what has your favorite episode been thus far? John in Potomac, Maryland is thus far.
Quick shout out to the graphics team. These cards are beautiful. You'll see these with the Uncontested Investing logo, hopefully in future episodes. But
they won't all say 100.
Very well executed. Nope, they'll just say Uncontested Investing with our flashy logo there. Favorite episode?
Far.
There's a couple early candidates. The one that strikes me right away is Kurt Power. He works for a company called Quest Trusts, and I believe they're located out of Houston.
Yep.
But leading up to it, all the guests have been gracious with their time and sharing their knowledge. He was the first person that I had met before we actually recorded an episode. So I get on these calls and try to do, a 10 to 15 minute introduction and kind of do a run through of people that we end up interviewing. But Kurt, I had met on the road, seen him at trade shows. So to actually have somebody sit down that I knew and just how well I thought that translated and felt like throughout the episode, I'm excited to have, obviously, meet new people, but also have people that I know in the industry and bring them on to the podcast format, because that, again, was another episode that just breezed through. It was easy. There was never an awkward pause, what to do next. There was no stumbling, and it was just kind of a few friends talking rather than a constructed interview, if that makes sense.
It does. So my favorite episode, I'm not going to say my favorite episode. I'm going to say my favorite recording day. And that was the first day we recorded in either April or May of 2022. And it's because that day, Josh Wilson flew in from New Orleans, and we had only met once at Family Mastermind. Logan Fulmer flew up from San Antonio, and we had never met in person. And Mike Hambright moved some things around to drive in to the studio. And I can't even tell you how early I was at it. Just nervous, and it was hot, and the lights were in your face, and they had us in the wrong studio, and they couldn't turn on the air conditioner, and I'm sweating, like literally in between episodes. I'm like toweling myself. That happened in Austin too. So for me, the fact that people trusted enough in me, RCN, and REI Inc. to, fly in to record on a podcast that had never aired, right? That I couldn't even tell them when it would air. Like, I don't know, June or July. It just meant the world to me. And so, and Josh has a big business. He's very busy. Logan is very busy. Mike's very busy. Like, they took time out of their schedule to fly in to help us get this thing started. And it's kind of funny, like, Josh was the first recording. And I had never pitched the Money Minute to someone. I had never even done the intro before. I think I had to do the intro like 10 times, and I still got it wrong.
Yep.
I finally just, that would be, back to the other question, that'd probably be the best blooper reel ever. I'm like, welcome to Uncontested REI Inc. Like the whole time I was trying to, finally after like the first 2 weeks of recording, we had that professional voiceover lady do the intro so that I didn't keep fumbling over it. So that was my favorite day. Like, and mainly because those three fellas just kind of, they bet on us, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they helped us get started. So it meant the world to me.
Yeah, you definitely have that gratitude and appreciation for people who in this industry have the busiest schedules you could imagine to, pause what they're doing, lend their time and their expertise. So it has been rewarding that people are willing to travel to New York City. Some of them live in the city, obviously, but, even traveling in New York City, if you live here, can be a hassle. So
Dallas is closer.
Yeah, exactly. So for people to make that time has been fun and like rewarding that, they want to be a part of something that we've created. So that's cool. All right, Tim and I have had a blast answering questions from fans. Thank you to everybody that contributed and made this 100th episode what it is. We're going to take a quick break, shout out to our sponsors, and we'll be back with more questions from you, our fans. Whether you are pursuing long-term or short-term ventures, RCN Capital has a wide range of loan programs that will help you reach your financial goals. We have loan programs for fix and flips, long-term rentals, new construction, and even multifamily properties. And don't forget to ask about our Platinum program for very experienced investors. To learn more about our loan programs, click the link in the bio or send an email to info@rcncapital.com today. All right, so we're back. 100th episode of Uncontested Investing. Tim, thank you again for taking the trip down memory lane and up from Dallas to be here in person for this. We have one more from a fan, Jamie S. in Charleston, South Carolina. This is a good one because she is right. Considering you two have diverse backgrounds and insights in your years in the industry, could you share where you find your best resources and information to bring to the podcast?
You want to go first?
I guess I will take this one because it's a pretty quick answer for me. At this stage of my career, it's all about finding the right guests and, pulling out the information that they have that can help our listeners, right? I'm kind of steering the ship, if you will, and they're the wealth of knowledge. So I kind of take a back seat and just tee up questions for them that they can hit out of the park, home run, and give people the information that they want. I'm slowly trying to work my way up to having the expertise myself. But right now where I can be the biggest asset to the podcast is the preparation, asking the right questions. And at the end of the day, the goal here for me is the guest is the star, right? Nobody wants to hear me ramble on and ask questions. I need to ask the questions that pull out the best answer from the guests that we invite on to Uncontested Investing.
I think for me, it's probably the reason. By the way, when I came up with that little sign off of mine, your network is your net worth, and today you've been growing both. Literally, that just I did not even plan that. It just kind of came out at the end of the first episode. But I am where I am today because of my network. I don't come from a rich family. I don't come from a smart family. I definitely don't come from a calm family. I got good at networking. And this morning, Fawad Bazi, who was one of the guests, I think in 22 or 23, sent me a text. He's to me and my loan officer at Ternus. He goes, really appreciate you guys and your help on getting my loan closed. We got the clear close today. And I called Brian, my LO. I said, are we doing a loan for what? He goes, no, man, you connected me. And, he's been a loan officer for 25 years. He's like, and he was having a problem with his existing loan. And I just figured I'd help him get that done instead of try to make him start over. And I kind of sitting in the hotel room thinking, that's pretty cool, right? Like Fawad had reached out to me for help. Mm-hmm. And I connected him with my guy, and my guy helped him, but that help had nothing to do with making money, right? That help was more about help him reach his goals and help him get where he wanted to go. And so the resource that's most valuable is your network.
Yeah.
The resource that's most valuable is your contacts. The resource that's most valuable is the person that's willing to do something with you, for you or with you, without putting their hand out for money or compensation. So I'm blessed to have a very deep Rolodex of people that will help me. And I think everyone can develop that. Everyone can find. Recently, Mike Carazola, one of the loan officers at RCN, was on the phone with someone trying to help him do something. I don't even remember what it was about. But I get this random, he's a property manager wanting to find out how to scale his property management company nationwide. Well, Mike connects me and the guy on a text message. I have a 30-minute phone call with him. I'm not a good fit to help him, but I know another guy that I connect him with that's the CEO of Renters Warehouse. And next thing you know, the guy's sending me text messages. Oh, my gosh, thank you so much. Kevin was so helpful. Yeah. I got nothing out of that. I don't remember his name. But I think my message to Jamie is there are more people out there willing to do that than are not.
Yeah.
And if your circle always wants to charge you money for advice, you need to find a different circle.
Yep. And I think that's something that's come up as a common theme in the episodes of the misconception of the real estate industry is very singular, solo, competitive. Nobody's willing to help, right? It's like a race. It's a contest. It's a competition. But once you are in the industry for 6 months, a year, 2 years, you quickly realize that there are so many people that have reached the mountaintop that while they're still doing their day-to-day and surviving and thriving in this business, they're also extending an arm and trying to pull up people that are trying to do the same thing that they've already accomplished.
The most successful people in business, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk to Jeff Tesh to myself in some degree, believe that if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together.
Yep.
And the most successful people are always looking to add quality people to their circle because that will help you go farther.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up. That was a great series of questions from our fans. Tim with another card toss. Love it.
I'll pick them up, I promise.
This has been a great episode. It's been fun to do this with you, so thank you. And as we've talked over the last couple minutes, one of the things that I'm kicking myself about as I start my career and journey as a podcast host is I didn't think of a snazzy tagline to end every episode. So, Tim, if you will, one more time for the 100th episode, let's hear it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for coming back to Uncontested Investing. It was great to see you all again. Nate is doing a great job. Keep tuning in, keep sharing it, keep commenting, keep giving him feedback. But as always, remember, your network is your net worth, and today you've been growing both. We'll see you next week, or he will.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook, and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.